Hello, I'm Wanda, and today at the library we're continuing our program for the summer reading. Our theme for the summer reading is Imagine Your Story. So today we are going to talk about your story. And your story is partially your family's story. So we're going to talk about how to learn and find out about our family story. Where did you get your eye color? What about your hair color? Did it come from your parents? Did it come from your grandparents? Your genes and your DNA help to decide. So, your family is part of your story. So we are going to talk about our inheritance and learn about our family. In the kit that you picked up at the library, you have a folder. Inside your folder will be an ancestral chart. Your ancestral chart. This chart will help you to record your direct line. The first spot down here is going to be for you. Your name and then the information that it asks for. When were you born? Where? Married? To whom? Where did you get married? And then later, someone else can record your death date. We don't want you to have to do that today. And then the name of the spouse. Then, at the top of the form, this will be your father and his information. And this is your mother and her information. You will be number 1, number 2, number 3. After yourself, the males in the family will be the even numbers and the female the odd numbers. 1, 2, 3. You come up here to 4, which will be your father's father and his mother. And then your mother's father and her mother. Then you have places out here where you can record the names of their parents, which would be your great-grandparents. Now, if you want to continue this far on for additional information, you can have another sheet, a continuation sheet. And this then we will not discuss now. If you want to continue farther out on your family tree, you can come visit at the library or call me. Ask for Wanda S. There's two Wandas here, so ask for Wanda S. and I can give you directions on how to continue on this chart. The next chart in your folder is your family group sheet. Now this sheet goes more into detail with each family group. On the first sheet, you would list yourself and your brothers and sisters down here with the parents, your father and your mother. And you will list then additional information. This again asks for birth, married, death dates, places where they were born and where they married. And then you can give additional information. What was their occupation? Name of the church where they attend church. Military information. Additional wives and additional husbands. You list yourself, all your brothers and sisters, as well as their information. birth, where, their marriages, spouses, additional. You can hang on to this, and your brothers and sisters may not be married yet. So you can always hold on to this and add information in the future. Also, I gave you additional charts, so you have one to list for each of your parents. You have a chart, you list your father and his brothers and sisters and his parents. Then your mother's brothers and sisters and her parents on a different chart. I also gave you some charts to put your grandparents on if you like. Now, this information, when we do our family tree or family history, we always start with ourselves and we start at home. We talk to our parents, we talk to our grandparents, and we ask them to give us as much information as they can to fill out our charts. That's the easiest way. If your mother said, well, Grandpa died, and I remember it was in March and there was snow on the ground because the ambulance got stuck in the cemetery, but I don't remember the date. Well, you may want to ask your mother or your grandmother or someone that would have family papers for the date. Or you can always say, let's make a trip to the cemetery. I want to see the tombstone and find the date on the tombstone. That's another way of doing it. But the best way is to talk to family, talk to aunts and uncles, anyone you think might be able to help you fill out the chart. Because when you get to your mother's brothers and sisters, you will need to find additional information, or your grandparents. So that is this chart. You can think of family history as a puzzle. You complete as much of this information as you can, and then the items that you do not know, have not been able to find, those are the pieces that you have to dig a little deeper to find. Also in your kit, you will find a notebook. You can do various things. You can just make notes. Or what would be fun would be to go and visit your grandparents or your parents and just write down answers to questions. Ask your mom and dad or your grandparents even. What was school like when you were in school? What did you do to entertain yourself without video games? And you didn't have your own phone? How did you talk to your friends when you didn't have a phone? So find out what your parents and your grandparents did as children. And you can always write down their stories. If you really want to find out stories, ask your aunts and uncles what mom and dad were like when they were younger. This year is 2020, and it's a bicentennial for Scott County. That means it's the 200th year since Scott County has been a county. How does your family fit into the history of Scott County? Well, you might find out in asking your parents or your grandparents or doing your research when your family first came to Scott County. How did they come to Scott County? They might have walked, or they might have come by horse and wagon through the Wilderness Trail, up through Cumberland Gap to Indiana. So it might be fun to read about the wilderness trail, what life was like coming north on the wilderness trail or through Cumberland Gap. You might want to imagine and write your story. So that's something you can use your notebook for. Also in your packet, you will find a photo album. You may not want to fill out your family sheets and do a lot of research, but it would be fun to tell your family history in photos. I'm sure you have photos of yourself and your mom and dad. Make sure you ask your mom and dad for photos, though. Don't just go take them from somewhere. But you can put photos of yourself, your brothers and sisters. Ask Grandma and Grandpa for photos of them, for aunts and uncles, as children as well as adults. Now, if you use them in your photo album, something smart to do is to lightly write the names on the back of the photos of who's in the photo, or else get a piece of paper and write the names on the photos and put beside or behind your picture. This is so if you want to keep your family history several years from now, when your children or grandchildren find this, they say, oh, this is my grandma or grandpa's family history. But who's that person there? Who's with grandpa there? So names are very important on photos as well. Now, if you can't find photos of some of your grandparents and they have passed away, you might want to visit the cemetery where they're buried. Earlier, I said you can visit cemeteries to find dates off of the tombstone if you need them. Well, it's always fun to take pictures of the tombstone as well. Sometimes, unfortunately, tombstones are destroyed. Either the weather weathers them and they cannot be read years to come, or maybe vandals like to tear up cemeteries sometimes, and this is not a good thing to do, but it does happen. So if we have pictures, we can at least remember the tombstone of our ancestors. You can also write in your notebooks about the pandemic. We don't think about living history, but today we are living history. Several years from now, this pandemic will be in history books. And people will want to know how the people that lived during the pandemic, what they did, what was life like day to day. You can write about how people were hoarding toilet paper, and hopefully you had enough toilet paper. But just fun things that you might have done with your family during the pandemic. So that's part of your history as well. Now that you have found everything that you can out about your family from your family members, you still have pieces of the puzzles missing. So you're welcome to come to the library. Here at the library, we have a subscription to Ancestry, which our patrons can use free of charge. We also have other books. We have family histories. We have books. This is a book about early pioneers that tells about different families in Scott County. So we have marriage records and other records that can help you fill in your gaps. So we hope to see you soon. Come see us at the Scott County Library. Bye.